So welcome to the latest in our Retire Abroad virtual roadshow. Today we're looking at the practicalities of moving to Spain, so focusing entirely on Spain. Some of you who may have listened to the first one about the general moving to Europe will be familiar with some of the points that are made, but we'll be going into a lot more detail today. So this is about some of the ideas and some of the issues you should consider as you plan your retirement to Spain. And then this afternoon, later we'll be looking at buying property in Spain and then financial issues this afternoon. But here we'll be looking at things like immigration, residence, and healthcare, driving, and other such things. So I'm Nigel Ayres. I run Expat Network. I've lived in Hong Kong, Malaysia, and the US, and have lived for the last 3.5 years in Spain. We're joined here by Joanna Alderton of Aldertons and Emma Jones, her colleague from Aldertons. Before we start, let's just note that we're here to answer your questions. If you have any questions, please use the button on your screen to submit them, and we'll answer all that we can on the day. Any that we miss, we'll send to you an answer through the email. So if you have any questions that you don't send to us today and think about them later, then please email us at expats@expatnetwork.com. Okay, so perhaps we could start by asking Joanne to tell us a little bit about herself and the services you provide. Thanks, Joanne.
No problem. Thanks, Nigel. Thanks for inviting me to be on the panel. Hi, everybody. My name is Joanne Alderton. I am a owner of Aldertons of Spain. We are a registered relocation agents based in the Costa Blanca north of Spain, but with regards to relocations, we can assist throughout the entire country. Myself and Emma, who is the head of our bureaucracy, so this is the lady that processes all of our visa requirements and vehicle importations, etc. We are qualified in Spanish immigration. So we have both been in Spain for 20 plus years. I know we only look 21. And we are massive aficionados of this amazing country. Personally, I have lived all over the world. I started as a nipper as 21 years old, traveling the world and working for tourist companies. I've lived in Mexico, I've lived in Cuba, I've lived in Sri Lanka, lived in Goa, I've lived in various different countries, and I have lived all over Spain, including all of the islands, and finally settled into this gorgeous region known as the Marina Alta, which is the northern Costa Blanca. Emma moved over here
I moved over here before a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here 26 years. I love it. I've always been in this area, living in this area. And I've actually applied for Spanish nationality.
So we're going to be able to talk to you about all of that later on as we go through the plan of the day. My business is focused on helping people to move to Spain, making sure that all the paperwork is correct, all the trámites, which is the procedures, are followed in order to be able to obtain the relevant and correct visa for their situation, and also a bespoke property finding home hunting service where we can assist you in location and also in the actual correct property for you as well. So yeah, it's an all-encompassing service, and we'll go into that in more detail as we go through this webinar.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Looking at the registrations of people, there are quite a number of people who have a relatively clear idea of where they want to live. Others have included Spain amongst a list of other countries, and therefore may not yet have decided where they want to go, apart from the fact that it should have sunshine, I should imagine. So perhaps if you could start off by just giving a little sort of pitch about Spain, and then perhaps go through the different areas of Spain and what the sort of attractions of each are. That would be great.
Yeah. So I mean, Spain, the reason it's so popular for expats and for people, especially as we're talking about the retirement age group, is the climate, because it is wonderful no matter where you are in Spain. The biggest areas are always going to be the costas, so Costa del Sol, Costa Blanca, Costa de la Luz, Costa Azahar. they are always going to be superbly popular. A little bit further down the coast from where we are, you have the Almeria and Murcia region, which are slightly more cost effective because land is cheaper there. So you've got budgets and, you know, horses for courses throughout the entire Costas. For the retirement demographic, the cities don't tend to be the number one place for people to head to. It does tend to be the coastal region and that lovely outdoor cafe lifestyle. When you're talking about moving over here, it is important to look at the different regions that are available for you. The reason it is so popular is because it's very, very established. Spain is the number one destination in Europe for expats from all over Europe and further afield, such as the UK, such as the United States, etc., etc. The infrastructure behind the lifestyle here is second to none, especially in the more what's the word I'm looking for? More sought after areas and the more established areas. Things like everyday life in Wi-Fi or you know 5G or whatever you want to call it these days is second to none in these areas. The healthcare system is great. The support network for people making that move over here is superb. They're well on the face of things, that everything is very Spanish and it's all nice and cafe culture lifestyle. Underneath that surface, you have a whole array of services and people here to help. Language is always going to be an issue because obviously Spanish is the main language here, and depending on the area that you go to, you have different languages and different nuances of the language, different dialects to deal with. But English is widely spoken, especially throughout the Costas. So that transition period into transplanting your life from one place to another is phenomenally more easy. Lots of support networks within the town halls to help you integrate, and lots of companies and charities and support networks within Facebook groups, etc., that will help you transport your lifestyle over here as well. It really is out of this world, and I can highly recommend it.
Thanks, Joanne. The language is interesting because I mean, the landlady of the villa that we had been renting speaks only Valenciana. So you know, you can learn Spanish, but then find you have somebody who only really speaks Valenciana, which is interesting. But anyway, it's a great place, and we've thoroughly enjoyed ourselves there. So perhaps we could just start off by looking at some of the issues people need to think about as they plan their retirement. One thing I guess to start off with is about financing your life there. We'll be dealing with that this afternoon in a more detailed session. But one thing just to mention is your pensions. Obviously, you know, we will deal with private pensions, how you might want to think about transferring those. The state pension, for those of you who already qualified rather than moving out pre-retirement, if you arranged it in the UK, it's straightforward, I think, to arrange for it to be paid across the board. If you are applying once you've arrived in Spain, as I did, you have an issue of how you get hold of it. Now, you can go onto the International Department site, and there's an article on our website that'll take you through everything that's needed. But if you do that, you have to download a form, you fill it in, and they ask you questions like, have you ever lived in England? Tell us every employer you've had in the UK. Tell us every home that you've had. And if you're like me, I'm in my 26th home. It's not something you want to undertake. So instead, if you phone them up, they just ask you a few questions. You better go through that. It doesn't take very long, and then it goes into the system. Now, the system is also backlogged, as I guess everything these days. And so for me, I didn't hear anything for 3 months. I rang up and said, what's happening? He said, absolutely nothing has happened, looking at your file. And I therefore he said, right, I'll put you on an urgent list. And 1 week later, it was all sorted. So it is well worth bearing in mind that if you do need to do that for once you're in Spain, that you should use the phone. I would say that is by far, I found, the most efficient way of dealing with things. The other side of sort of financing is the sort of cost of living. How much does it cost compared to the UK? And obviously a lot of that depends on the lifestyle you choose to live. So it's all different things for different people. But Joanne, perhaps what would you say about how the cost of living compares with the UK.
So yeah, the cost of living is lower than the UK. Obviously, in current times, inflation is rising both in the UK and in Spain as well. So that is something to take into consideration. And obviously, since the effects of Brexit, if you're used or you're thinking of coming over here and using specific British fare or buying specific British fare, such as Warby's bread or, Lurpak butter and things like that, then the importation costs have risen dramatically as well. So those things have gone up in price, but there are always the equivalents in Spanish or European mates. So, lifestyle, everyday lifestyle shopping is lower, markets is lower, the cafe and food culture is lower. But to give you an idea, as I said, we did one of these webinars a couple of days ago, and we just did a quick look at what the price of petrol is, unleaded petrol, 95, and that is €1.59 a litre today. So that's a direct comparison on what it would be in the UK today. And for something I like to look at the fixed costs of things, so things that you will be paying throughout the course of the year if you're living here, talking from a homeowner perspective. And that would be things like IBI, which is the equivalent of the council tax in the UK. That's basically split into two parts. You have IBI and you have basura. Basura is the rubbish collection tax. When you lump both of those together, that would give you the equivalent of the council tax in the UK. Our IBI here, I have a 3-bedroom villa with a pool, and I pay roughly around 600, 700 euros a year on my IBI, and I pay 140 euros a year on my basura. So under €1,000 for the entire year for all the taxes that I have to pay to the local community, to the local town hall for the services. So that's dramatically different from what I was paying in the UK when we had a house there. Other things to take into consideration, obviously petrol, etc. Car tax, I pay around 50 euros a year, which is low, and car insurance. Obviously I have a business, and mine is business insurance. It's fully encompassed, very low excess, 50 euros over 75 euros, and I pay 420 euros a year for a Hyundai Tucson. So it gives you fixed ideas of what the cost of living is like. Things that are more expensive here, internet is more expensive. I have fibre that runs into the house, and I pay about 70 euros a month for the fibre, which is dramatically more expensive than what I know my sister pays for the equivalent in the UK. I can shop around and get better deals. However, what I have coming into my house works, so therefore I don't like to mess with it, because when something works here, you want to stick with it. So yeah, I'm prepared to pay that fee because it works for me. Mobile phone contracts, again, mine's business, so it's slightly more difficult, but my parents live over here. They pay 40 euros a month for their mobile phone contracts. That's for 2 phones on the contract, and they have unlimited calls on that, and they have a very large quota of data, which they make all their calls on WhatsApp these days as well. So everyday living costs and yearly living costs overall lower, probably about 20% lower than what you would expect to pay in the UK. If we're transplanting that to the US, as we do have a lot of clients that come from the US, then the living costs are dramatically lower than what you pay in the USA. So yeah, overall, it's a win-win.
Okay, thank you. We've had not a question, but a comment come in that your internet is actually fairly comparable with what people they are paying in the UK, and we paid rather less than you, so it was for a far inferior service, I'm sure, because my speed was not that high. Anyway, so I mean, moving on then, in terms of the other sort of things people need to think about, I think property is going to be a key one, and we'll be dealing with that in the next session. There are issues around whether you rent or whether you buy, and that, many people, choose to buy, and that's always a very sensible thing to do. One of the issues, I think, is if you're not yet certain whether you're going to return and so on, that can lead to a more sort of solid commitment, provided you're convinced that this is something that's going to work. That's fine. Rental are more difficult to achieve in the sense that there are a lot of summer lets that owners can make a lot more money out of. They're basically getting paid a week for what they get paid a month or even more during the summer season, and therefore they can make more money doing it that way. And the season is quite long. I know opposite me there was a place that was rented out pretty much continuously throughout the year, and only started in December and January sort of being vacant. So you can imagine if you're getting that higher holiday rent, that can have a real impact. So renting can be difficult. Finding unfurnished properties, for instance, is more difficult than finding furnished, and so on. What would you add about rentals there?
So yeah, I think from the rental perspective over here, if you are looking at moving over to Spain, obviously you have to invest a certain period of time, a certain period of your lives into the area that you want to move to. Now, it's very easy to make the assumption that you want to move to Torrevieja or Almeria or somewhere like that because you're looking on Rightmove or A Place in the Sun or one of those portals to have a look at the price of property. That is 101 mistake of moving to Spain. Do not base your property search or your lifestyle search on the price of property on a portal. What you see on there is just a selection and things that agencies are pushing out. Many of them aren't even available anymore. There's no regulation yet at the moment on a state agency over here. So the most important thing to do is spend some time traveling through Spain and having a look at the different areas. Take time out to meet people in that area. So people like myself as a relocation agent who will show you around the area and tell you the good and the bad. Because if you're speaking to locals who've lived there, of course they're going to big the area up because they've chosen to live there. So you have to find impartial people who will give you the good and the bad of that area and the information that really is pertinent to moving overseas, such as internet connection, can dogs be walked in this area, is there any hunting so that it's quite dangerous for cats to roam around and things like that. There's lots of things to take into consideration. Now, when it comes to looking at rentals, if you're along the costas, as Nigel very correctly said, it's very difficult to get a year-round rental in these areas for a good price. Practically impossible, I'd say, these days, because people want the tourist income that comes in the height of the season, especially. So for 11, 12 weeks of the year, they can earn an absolute fortune. The whole of Europe comes to the costas in August, especially. So it's very difficult to get a rental. And quite often you'll find that rentals are offered for 10 months or 11 months, and you have to move out during the height of the summer. So if that's something that suits you, that's okay. If not, then I would suggest looking at winter rentals. So maybe 3 weeks here, 4 weeks there, 4 months there, 3 months there, whatever, depending on what your visa status it would be, so that you can actually invest time in those areas. But be aware, rentals here, if you are planning on living out here long-term on a rental, we see it time and time again, especially our retiree clientele. They've been somewhere 3, 4, 5 years, and then all of a sudden the owner wants the house back, and you've got nowhere to live. And if somewhere you were paying €800 a month for 4 years ago, it's now worth €1,400 a month because the prices have absolutely skyrocketed, and you're in a bit of a difficult situation. So my personal advice to people is spend 6 to 9 months maybe renting over the winter period with a view to buying your own place over here, as that stability is second to none. Instability in your retirement years in a different country is very, very unnerving.
Yeah, and I just add there that from personal experience, I have some friends who like to spend the autumn in Spain. And one of the issues with the winter rentals now is that with Brexit, Brits can only come for 90 days at a time.
Yeah.
The Dutch, who, as Joanne has rightly said, everywhere you move, there's Dutch number plates throughout the winter, and in the summer. They can stay for as long as they want. So winter rentals tend to go to those members of the EU because they can get a much longer rental, and it can be quite difficult to find a place that you can only take for 90 days and so on. So that is another issue. It isn't impossible, but it is increasingly difficult. So the rental side is the one thing I would say in terms of the rental. It is reasonably in favour of the tenant if you can find a place, and we certainly lived there for 3.5. We were in 2 different rentals for different reasons, and both of them were fine, and we got them unfurnished and so on without too much difficulty. So it is increasingly difficult, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other side of property is obviously UK property, and you can choose to keep that and obviously keep an interest in the UK market, and that obviously makes sense for many people. It is worth listening to the financial side this afternoon, because if you retain a UK property, then you need to think about the sort of financial consequences. If you sell that property once you've moved to Spain, then you don't get the sort of principal private abode sort of exemptions and so on, so your gain becomes taxable, and that's another factor. But we'll go into more detail on that this afternoon. So then I guess one of the first things is, the intimidating thing of moving to a new country. How do you settle into that lifestyle? Are you just going to be sort of sitting there on your own? One thing obviously is it's a cafe culture. You go out to bars, there's people there and so on, and people eat out all the time and so on. But what would your tips be, Joanne, on how to settle in and make sure you get into the lifestyle?
So tip number 1 is to be honest with yourself. You're thinking of transplanting your lifestyle from country A to Spain. That means that the very basics of your life, things like, do you like watching Coronation Street? Do you like watching Homes Under the Hammer? Do you play chess online with people? I mean, the absolute basics, those are things that make you tick, and you will continue to do that in your new life over here. So you have to find places that are going to be able to accommodate that. It's very, very important, as I said earlier, to invest in orientating yourself around areas. Before you even start looking at property, look at the areas and find that place that makes your heart go a little bit faster, where you wake up or where you look outside and think, I can see myself here. I can see myself walking across that square. I can see myself walking along that coastal path. I can see myself getting involved in that town's fiestas. That's where you want to then move to, providing that all the other boxes tick, such as the internet, etc. One of the things when you're looking at settling into a new area is your lifestyle, your friends. Are you an outgoing person? Are you an introvert person? There's lots of, it's very unique to you, and investing in finding someone that's going to help you in the area that you've chosen is going to be the most important thing, because they will be able to guide you to the right clubs, the right societies, the right support networks that's going to help you fit into that society. So if you're coming to the area where I live, for example, we take you along to local networking events if you're thinking of setting up a business, or to local ladies' lunches, which are raucous, by the way, if you want to be socialising and raising money for charity. Our job is to ensure that you're fitting into that society. If you're into keep fit, we'll introduce you to local PTs and clubs and gym clubs, etc. And if you just are very, very interested in going out and walking and getting a bit of heart health going on and things like that, then again, we'll take you and show you where the routes are of those, the popular routes for walking. And from there, your lifestyle will blossom, because you will naturally make friends and associates. In an expat heavy area, the one thing that all inhabitants have in common is that they have all done the journey that you're about to do. So you always have common ground when you're talking to people. How was their experience? Who did they use? Etc., etc. So it's our job as a relocation agent to help you find those people where you're going to start making those buds of friendship. But yeah, please do make sure the most important thing is location, location, location.
Yes, thanks. I think it is certainly, I've found, not entirely always straightforward to settle in, particularly if you time your arrival as we did just before COVID came in, and we then spent several months where we couldn't go outside the front gate and so on. And as a quick sort of amusing thing for COVID, there were more people imprisoned in Spain than there were fined in the UK, is my understanding. And they were very strict. So if my wife could go to the supermarket, but only to the nearest one, and she was on the first occasion stopped 4 times by the police on the way. She then quickly learned that if you went after 1 o'clock, they were all on siesta, and we never got stopped again. But that is,
yeah, every roundabout had the armed Guardia Civil or the Policía checking where you were going. It was a very severe lockdown, very severe lockdown. You're only allowed out during certain times, depending on your age, etc. But this is one of the things I was saying, Nigel. It's so important to invest in an independent company or relocation company or whatever that's going to be that shoulder for you to lean on. So for that first year of your life over here, you can pick up the phone and say, I've received this letter through the post, or I've got this, I've got that, what is it? And we're there to talk you through it and say, right, this is the steps that we need to do. Let's go to the town hall, let's register this, let's do that. So that there's nothing's going to come and bite you on the bum. It's one of my favourite phrases later on. Everything's done correctly. And it's just that little bit of investment into your future life, but it will help you, especially during COVID. You know, we were constantly in our office, there's 5 of us, and in our office, we were constantly up to date with all of the information that was coming through, relaying that out to all of our clientele to let them know what times they were allowed out, etc., etc. So there was no major rumors flying around like you get on the Facebook pages or anything. It was bona fide, concrete advice coming through all the time to make sure that you were kept on the straight and narrow.
yeah. Okay, well, thanks. I guess one of the next things that people need to consider is bringing your personal items across to Spain. I'll speak here from personal experience. I've commented before that I'm going to write an article very soon about the incompetent competent expat, and that's me. I've lived around the world for many years, and I still make major mistakes. One of the things is, often you get tempted to decide on what you're going to bring. Do you need to bring it is the first question, given you can buy things here, etc. And then once you have decided, if you go for a full removal service, then they can be great, but they can be expensive, and you can be tempted instead to go for a man in a van. That's what we did. And we'd worked out and given them the amount of cubic footage or cubic meterage that we wanted to bring. What they hadn't mentioned was weight. So with a man in a van, they are very restricted on weight. And so when you try to get all that stuff on, they then say, oh, well, can't take that, I'll take it over weight. Whereas a big removal truck doesn't have that restriction. So that is well worth remembering. Sorry, just 1 second, I'm going to
Restart it.
For some reason, my camera decides to get excited every now and again. So
presence of greatness.
Yes. So the other side of it is, there are more forms to fill in these days because of Brexit and so on. But ultimately, you can bring things over and so on. Is there anything you'd like to add on the removal side?
Yeah, I think be cutthroat is my advice on this one. The amount of people I've taken around houses that will look at something and say, oh, my sofa won't fit in there. If that house is the perfect location, then your sofa is not the perfect sofa. Your lifestyle is what you're thinking of here, and Spain sells sofas, and it's fun going shopping for new things. So yeah, honestly, what fits in your houses in your home countries, when you come over here, might not be perfect in the 4 walls here, because the lifestyle is very, very different. It's an outdoor-indoor lifestyle. So you're going to be outdoor more than you are indoors. So be cutthroat. Honestly, I wish when we moved over, we brought quite a lot of things, and I wish we'd have left most of it at home and just bought again over here. Some things are slightly more expensive, going back to the cost of living. So electrical goods can be a little bit more expensive than in the UK. However, on the overall savings of things of what you would pay on transport and things, it's not actually that bad. So I would, sell it all in the UK and just have fun buying everything for your new life over here, unless you've got family heirlooms, of course.
Yes, to agree with your point about sofas and so on. I mean, we, for instance, had some nice reclining leather chairs. They wouldn't really fit in the living room, and we have a large round dining table which didn't fit in the dining room. So, but we had a nice big Naya, which is like a terraced area outdoors. And our table and those chairs lived outside, and we looked out across the view in the open air. So there are, it is a different lifestyle. It's a different thing. So the way that you use the furniture will be different. And so stuff that is designed for Northern Europe is not necessarily suitable for Southern Europe. So let's now let's perhaps move on to the, if you like, the technicalities of the immigration. If you're planning to come over part of the year, then you are obviously restricted now to the 90 and 100 days under the Schengen rules. Under the withdrawal agreement, UK people don't have to actually apply for a visa, but they are subject to the same rules. And the rules basically say you can spend 90 in every 180 days. That doesn't mean you've got to have it in one block. You can break it up as much as you want. But the easiest way to work it out is just say, as of today, if I look back 180 days, have I been in Spain or in Europe, anywhere in Europe for more than 90 days? So you just look back 180 days at any one point. So as you get, 180 days away from the last time you're in, then that drops off and another day comes in, so to speak. So it's those are the rules. The other thing to bear in mind is that it is anywhere in the Schengen area, which is the EU, Switzerland, and various other countries. So you need to consider that. On the other hand, once you've got residence, you are residents in Spain. You're not resident in the EU. So if you go into France, you're again subject to the 90 and 180 days. Having said that, they have absolutely no way of knowing that you've gone into France because there's no border. So provided you stay within the EU, it is unlikely that you would be found out. But those are the rules, and therefore, if you're in breach of them, you can end up in problems. So that 90 and 180 days, I think many people were allowed sort of a lot of leeway in the early days, but I believe they're now enforcing it more, and there are certainly new biometric provisions coming in, which will make it much easier for them to enforce it. So what's your experience in terms of enforcement there, Joanne? Have you seen?
Yeah, well, we've been dealing with visas for non-EU citizens for the last 8 years. So prior to Brexit, one of our biggest markets is the American and Canadian market. And they have always been subject to the 90 in 180 day rule. We do see deportations. We do see people being refused entry. And we do see people getting an X in their passport with a number of days that they are not allowed to return into the Schengen zone upon their departure. It doesn't happen to everybody. So some people do get through the net. And if you're prepared to take that gamble, then be on your head, on your shoulders. But I believe as of June this year, they're going to full biometrics within the major ports and airports into the Eurozone. So for example, along the costas, Alicante Airport and Malaga Airport are the busiest airports into the costas. You've also got obviously the main hubs like Madrid and Barcelona and Palma. They will all be fully biometric. I don't have experience of it being fully biometric yet, but my guess would be that it will flag up straight away because there will be no more need for the wet stamp as you leave and come out of the Schengen zone. It will be automatically tallied within the cloud. However, I'm surmising because we've not seen it in operation yet. It's just so important from our perspective, dealing with visas and residency. It's so important to not break those rules. We have had people turn down on residency applications because they've shown that they've been overstayers in the past. And if you're in an overstaying situation, as is right at this moment, we can't even apply for the application for the residency for you. It will be flat out denied. So you must take responsibility and you must make sure that you're behaving and sticking to the Schengen freedom of movement allowance.
Okay, a couple of questions come in. One, is Cyprus included in the same 90 days or excluded if split between Spain and there?
I believe it's not. I believe it's outside of the Schengen zone. So I believe you can go to Cyprus. So you can do 30 days, 90 days in Spain, 90 days in Cyprus if you want. But yeah, and Turkey, I think there's some other areas as well, Eastern Europe, that you can go to as well. But yeah, I believe Cyprus is out of it. I will send it through to you, Nigel, after this webinar. We do have a map in our office of the different zone areas and how they fall into it. So
and there are articles on the website. But what I would suggest to people is, if you just simply Google Schengen zone, you'll see a full list of all the countries, and then any country that you're considering, you can see whether they're part of that or not. So the other thing then is, I heard that Spain are looking at negotiating with the Schengen to allow Brits to stay longer. Have you heard about this at all? It's certainly a rumour I've heard.
It's definitely a rumour, and
good rumour.
The expat forums and the Facebook forums blew up over it. Everyone's, yay, no, it's complete baloney. One minister mentioned that it would be a possible idea to look at that. However, it was just one minister, and Spain is part of the Eurozone. Spain is part of Schengen. Therefore, they have to adhere to the Schengen rules. They have no plans of coming out of it, and they will be sticking to the 90 and 180-day rules, unless the Schengen zone itself as a whole changes that. But there is nothing tabled at the moment. There's not even a rumour of that's going to happen. So I'm afraid that is one of those lovely, we wish it would happen, but it hasn't, and it won't.
No. Okay, thanks. For those who want to stay full time, or at least, shall we say, longer than the 90-day rules and so on, essentially they have to get a visa, and the visa that you can apply for in Spain will vary according to your circumstances. But here we're primarily talking about people retiring to Spain, and therefore the most common one is the non-lucrative visa. There is also the golden visa, but the golden visa really only gives you an advantage if you don't want to be here full time. So you can invest in property, and you can be anywhere from 1 day to 365 days, and that is the advantage if you want to sort of get the right to, but not the actuality of becoming resident and so on. So perhaps we could start with the non-lucrative visa. The other thing, and somebody's asked a question of this, which we'll come to, is the digital nomad visa, which is just coming in. And if you're planning to pre-retire here, work remotely and so on, then that could be very relevant to people and so on. So if we could perhaps just start with the non-lucrative visa, we'll just very briefly mention the rules of the golden visa, and then talk about the new digital nomad visa, to the extent that we know what's happening yet. So the non-lucrative visa.
So the difference straight away between non-lucrative visa and golden visa is the non-lucrative visa is a residency visa. The golden visa is a passport visa into the Schengen zone. So two very different things. The non-lucrative visa means because it is, that you have to maintain residency in Spain in order to hold that visa. The golden visa is a travel passport. It lets you in and out for as many days as you want throughout the course of the year. But bearing in mind, if you spend over 183 days in the Schengen zone or in Spain, you will be tax resident. So there's the difference between the two. The non-lucrative visa is often referred to as the retirement visa or the pensioners visa, because it is just a residency visa. It doesn't give you the right to work. It just means that you can stay and live in Spain. In order to qualify for the non-lucrative visa, you're going to have a clean bill of health. And if you haven't got a clean bill of health, then you need to have full coverage on private health insurance. Or you have to have an S1 form from the UK, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a bit. You also have to have a clean record with regards to your previous criminal activity. So if you have any minor misdemeanors, if you're using us to do applications for the visa, you need to let us know about that so we can advise you whether to continue with the dream of living in Spain or to park it. Not every misdemeanor that you have on your criminal record will be automatically denied, but it is at the discretion of the person that's looking into your application. So we can help with that. You will need to have a certificate to say that you do not carry any major illness such as Ebola, COVID, TB, dengue fever, anything like that. And you also need to prove that you are not going to be a financial drain on the Spanish state. And the way that they prove that is by asking you to show that you have a minimum of 28,800 euros in an account or in passive income on a yearly basis. That's 28,800, and that's for the first applicant. If it's a married couple, the second applicant will also need to show they have a further 7,200 euros. Okay, now that doesn't mean you have to have that money sat in a bank account. You can have that money coming in on monthly payments that add up over the course of a year to that amount. So call it 35,000, 36,000. Yeah. So if you've got that money coming in through pension payments, or if you have a home in the UK and you rent it out, then in rental payments, anything that you do not physically have to get up and earn the money. So, you know, if you have a limited company in the UK and you are a director, non-working director, and you draw down dividends, then that is passive income as well and can be put towards your application for the non-lucrative visa. So, and obviously the state pension as well will go towards that. So all these bits of money coming in from different areas, as long as they add up to over the 36,000 euros each year, you are going to be able to get the non-lucrative visa. Now, the non-lucrative visa is something that's extremely important to take note of, and something that many people who've applied in the past 18 months haven't really been following, is that you need to adhere to the rules of the non-lucrative visa. So you must be in situ, you must be resident in Spain for over 183 days, and you must be doing your tax declarations over here. If you do not do that, you will not get a renewal and you will be asked to leave the country. And that has happened. We've had quite a few cases, people that have not been given the correct advice when they got the visa in the first place, now coming through to us to ask us to help them. And unfortunately, we can't. They have to go out of the country for another 180 days or however long it's been, the class has been overstayers, and then we can reapply as a brand new application. But it's a very difficult situation for people to find themselves in, and something that people need to be aware of now. The golden visa is very different. The golden visa, the non-lucrative visa must be applied for when you're in the UK or in the States or wherever you're watching from, your home country basically, and it must be applied for through the consulate, which in the UK is London, Manchester or Edinburgh. So you've got those three places to go to. They each have their own catchment area, and if you fall into the catchment area of Manchester, you must go to Manchester. You can't choose to go to London or one of the others. Okay, so it's very, we have to follow their rules and we have to jump to their tune. But if we do it right and you package it correctly with a smile on your face, you will get that visa, not a problem. The golden visa can be applied for on Spanish soil, but the one thing that you do have to do for the golden visa is you have to invest a minimum of 500,000 euros into Spanish property or €1 million into a Spanish registered bank account. So there's your two options there. Those, like I say, the golden visa, we can apply for that in Spain whilst you're here within your 90 days, and it takes between 2 and 3 weeks to get approved. Walk away with the visa, that's fine. If you stay over 183 days, we then have to go down the residency route and take it to step 2, which is where we go to the foreigner's office over here and get your little card to show that you're a resident. With the non-lucrative visa, as soon as you arrive over, we have to then go straight away and get you your residency card.
Right. Okay, there's a number of questions come in. One, can it be part savings, part pension for the NLB?
Yeah, think of it as Lego or building blocks. You can just build it up and build it up, as long as they look back or they look at your 12 months earning. So if you've got 13,000 in a bank account and then the rest of your pensions coming in, and you add all that together over the course of a year, and it adds up to the first person 28,800, or if it's a couple 36,000 on the nose, then you actually have enough money to get that visa.
Yeah, and I would sort of comment there that it is quite entirely possible for you to go through the entire process without any assistance. But these are examples of how having the expertise and experience of people like Joanne can be an enormous help, because one, when you get to the stage of talking to people in Spain, being able to speak Spanish can be quite important, but more importantly, they know what people accept and what they don't accept. And one of the problems you find in Spain is that each office, each individual person is likely to have a slightly different interpretation of what the rules are. But provided you know what has been accepted, then generally you can get through it. Would that be?
Yeah, it gives us a better platform. I mean, Emma is referred to from, and there's a department called UGE, which is the department that passes through the investor visa, which is the golden visa. And they refer to Emma as the friendliest bureaucrat on the northern Costa Blanca. And they're really friendly with her, which is great, because if anyone's ever dealt with Spanish bureaucracy before, you'll know how frustrating it can be. And quite often it is, computer says no. But once you have one of these people that you can sort of send a box of chocolates to, or get on first term basis, how's your son, or this, that and the other, we tend to be able to get a little bit more, I wouldn't say we can bend the rules, but we can possibly get through it a little bit easier. If something's denied and there's no reason for it to be denied, we're able to fight that corner for you and say, hey, Juan, come on, what's going on here? So you're investing in our contacts and our expertise in that, and Emma's friendliness.
So another question here: how do they decide which of the partners is the main one? I will be retiring, but my husband will continue to work remotely. Which of us has to have 28,800? Well, I think the answer is you need to have 36,000 between the two to cover the two of you.
And if your husband is continuing to work remotely, then you can't declare that as part of your visa application, because it will be denied. A non-lucrative visa is exactly what it says on the tin. It's non-lucrative. So you cannot be earning anything anywhere in the world. And because they've just introduced the digital nomad visa, that little loophole that they were tended to turn a blind eye to for people working remotely on the non-lucrative visa has now been closed. And you have to go down the right tramite, the right process in order, the right visa.
Okay, so just to clarify, for this couple, the wife should apply for non-lucrative and the husband should apply for the digital nomad. Is that
depends what he's continuing to do remotely? We'd need to speak. Every visa application is extremely individual, and if they want to get in contact with us and we can have a one-on-one, not a problem at all, and we can run through that with them. But it's on the face of it, from what you're telling us there, the non-lucrative visa would be the way to go through if he is a director and just earning dividends. If he's going to be working remotely, it will be the digital nomad visa, and his wife would go as a spouse on the digital nomad visa. So there's different options around it.
Okay. So another one here: if you have pre-existing health conditions such as hypertension or low-grade cancer, will it be possible to get private health insurance suitable for residents in Spain?
So yes, you can. One of the things that's the biggest problems here is the Spanish do not like to cover pre-existing illnesses. That said, there are policies that do cover pre-existing illnesses. They can be a lot more expensive, unfortunately. But there's also, if they want to speak to us after the webinar, there are companies out here that will issue the right certification for the visa. And may have a little bit of exclusions hidden in the background, which they won't really come to the fore. But it's a little bit of a grey area, that one. Don't really want to publicise that, but please do speak to us privately afterwards about that. One of the things that I would say is, if you are of retirement age, then you all qualify for the S1 form in the UK, and therefore you don't need the private health insurance.
Okay. So there's one here about the golden visa, which is 500,000 golden visa requirement per person or per couple. Now it is per couple, but one of the things that you must bear in mind, and I've personal friends who have fallen foul of this, is that if you have the property in joint names, and it's therefore you only got 250,000 each, so nobody qualifies. So it needs to go into one name, or there are probably other options.
Nigel, can I just correct you quickly on that? It's not per couple, it's per investment.
Individual, sorry, yes, you're right.
Per investment. So a minimum €500,000 investment needs to be made into property in one person's name. So if you have a house that's worth 700, 800,000, it can be split on the escritura, which is the deeds, and it can be split as 500,000 investment for Mr. A and 300,000 investment for Mr. B on that same property. Now, the fact that there's a 500,000 euro investment means that you then get to hold an umbrella with Golden Visa, okay? And under that umbrella, everybody that's a direct blood relative can go and come into Spain on a Golden Visa. You can all get it, all right? So it's just that one. But
Can I just say,
go on.
it has to be free of mortgages,
Yeah.
loans, debts, encumbrances.
clear-
The first 500,000 has to be clear of anything.
It's a cash investment. They also, when we're talking about the relatives on that, it is ascending relatives as well as descending. So if you want to come over here and bring mother-in-law or mother, then if you've got that 500,000 investment, they can come under that visa as well. So you can have 10 people on that one visa as long as they're all part of that same family and a direct blood relative of the person that's made that investment.
Okay. There's another question here which raises a slightly different point. So do you have to have that amount every year? And this is basically brings us into the renewal process where you renew for 2 years. And there is a sort of thing that people say that you've got to have twice the amount rather than amount, but I don't believe that is correct, is it?
Right. So this is where Spain becomes very frustrating because each autonomous community has its own little nuances or the way that they interpret things. So in the community, the Valencian community where we're based, it's just the 1 year. So I'm going to talk about a couple. So it's 36,000 euros. And if you have that sat in a bank account, then that's fine for your renewal visa, which will be given for 2 years. If you're in the Balearics, then if it's a lump sum of money, they will ask for 2 lots of that money. So 72,000. Thank you, Emma. She just wrote it down quickly for me then. 72,000 they'll ask to have in the bank account. Now, if you have that money coming through on a monthly basis that amortizes, so that multiplies to come to that amount over the course of a year, so 36,000 euros, then they will renew it because they see that's regular money coming in that won't stop, that will then work over a 48-month period. If it's sat in a bank account in a lump sum, they tend to say, oh, you can take that out anytime. So that's where the little nuance comes in. So it's always worth making sure that you are paying yourself the equivalent of 36,000 euros a year into a Spanish bank account. Even if you have it sat in a pot in London or wherever, and then pay it over, and then take it out and put it back into the pot in London, all they'll ask to see is the incomings into that, in the payments into that account. And you can show it's adding up to over 36,000 euros, and that should work. If it gets denied, using someone like us is where that comes in really handy because we can fight that for you.
Okay. So another question here. We've got a lot of questions coming in. How much does the NLV cost? How much does the NLV visa cost?
So the NLV visa costs, well, there's various different little taxes that you apply to it, but the tax that you need to pay to the consulate is £516 per person, with an extra £13, which is the
visa being stuck in the passport.
Yeah, they charge you for the sticky bit that goes in the passport. So £530 is what it's going to, and that's the tax. Then you've got, when you get to this side of the pond, when you get to Spain, you've also got little taxes that you'll pay there, which is like 16 euros for the card that you'll get issued, and any other. That's it. Obviously, then translation. Many of the documents that you have to hand into the consulate need to be translated and need to be apostille stamped, which is an official Schengen zone official stamp that you get, which proves that it's an original document. So yeah, you add up all of those fees and it starts to become quite costly. We always say that including processing fees, if you take on an agency like ourselves, then for a couple, it's going to cost about £2,000, something like that.
Okay, moving on to the next question. I will get my money from my mum's house when she is no longer here. It's the house I still live in. I can't show money in the bank until then. So I would have sold the house and be out of it. Can I live in my house I already own in Spain whilst applying for the visa? Where would they send correspondence to? Do they allow us to keep the passport?
So if she's replying, it depends on the house that you've already bought in Spain. If it's over 500,000 euros, then we can go straight for the golden visa, and then you can get then that's not a problem. If you are looking at getting a non-lucrative visa and you've got a house already in Spain, unfortunately, they don't take that into account with regards to your wealth or proving funds. I'm assuming the house that you're living in the UK, that's your mother's already living in that house as well. So you wouldn't be able to rent it out and get any income in from that. So unless you could prove funds of another way, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to get into the country, and you'd be with the 90 in 180 days.
Okay, and I think your situation sounds a little complicated. It's probably well worth giving.
Absolutely. Anybody that's got questions like this, on a more individual basis, I can't stress enough how individual each application is, and we need to talk very freely with regards to your finances, etc., so we can guide you correctly.
Right. There's two that are sort of on a similar issue here. One is that what is a difference if one of the partners is a EU passport holder and the other is not, and then the other is, I'm Irish, where do I stand on visa, healthcare, insurance, etc.?
You have a golden ticket. If you have a EU passport or you are married to somebody with an EU passport, then you are basically in the same situation as you were post-Brexit, and you are able to move over here. You still are tax residents if you spend over 183 days here. That's never changed. Whilst many people pre-Brexit never registered and declared the taxes, that is being clamped down on massively throughout the whole of Europe. So over 183 days, you do have to register as resident here, and you do have to declare your taxes and do tax returns. But with regards to freedom of movement, you've got no problem whatsoever. If you are married to somebody with who is an EU passport holder, then have your marriage certificate with you. Carry that with you at all times. And the unfortunate side of this is Spain only recognises documents that have been issued within the previous 90 days, which means that every 3 months you will have to request an up-to-date marriage certificate, which shows that your marriage is still valid. Okay, it's a hardship, a tiny hardship in the grand scheme of things. Just get that printed out and take it with you at all times, and that proves that you are married to an EU citizen, so therefore benefit from the free rights of movement.
Okay, now I've asked a question myself here because I've often been told, and I have a friend in that similar situation, Irish wife and UK resident, UK citizen rather. He can travel, I understand, into the country provided they're traveling together. If they travel separately, does he still get the right to come in and out?
With the marriage certificate, it will certainly help. Okay, so black and white, yes, he should be able to travel in with the marriage certificate because he can prove spousal relations. However, the individual guard that sat on duty that day at Border Force, it's how they interpret it. And you may get a stamp in your passport, etc. So, and it could put you irregular. Now, as long as we can prove relation, if that ever became an issue down the line, and we've got the marriage certificates live, etc., then that gives us, we've got a platform to fight on. And if it came to getting residency down the line, and that was flagged up as an overstayer, then we'd be able to show spousal rights. And it would be a battle, but it would be a battle that would be won. There's many little issues like that, and it all depends on the person on the day that you're going to be coming up against. But treat everyone with a smile and say hola, and it gives you a better way of getting forward. Sometimes they can just have got outside the wrong side of the bed, and whatever you do, you're going to get that.
Godwin here, which I think is just sort of to sum up really. I'm married to a Spaniard, married in Spain, so I wouldn't need an NLV. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes.
The answer is yes, but it might be more convenient to get an NLV because of those sort of quirks.
No, he wouldn't qualify for an NLV because of the spousal situation. What he would have to do, I'm assuming this is a male, sorry, if he's married to a Spaniard, it's called an arraigo familiar, which is basically it's a family visa. If you're going to be living in Spain, it's a family residence card, and it will say on it that you are married to a Spaniard. And with that, it's your golden ticket. It's freedom to move. You also get the right to work from day one on that as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I never mentioned about the golden visa. Sorry, I should have said the golden visa gives you the right to work in Spain from day one as well, and your family members.
Right. Another one on the golden visa: can the 500,000 investment be over more than one property, e.g., house worth 400, flat worth 200? The answer is yes. You can have as many properties as you want, provided they add in. The other thing is, what other investments? Because there's a purchase price of the property, but if you do extensions and things like that, those also count. Is that correct?
Yeah, so going just quickly to the golden visa again with the investments over numerous properties, we have quite a few clients that do that, because when you get the golden visa and you want to live over here, you still have to comply with residency rules with regards to the 28,800, 7,200 per extra family member that's going through. So we do have clients here that have bought their own house to live in for maybe 300,000, and then a couple of apartments for 100,000 each that they're then renting out, which goes towards income, towards proving that you've got the rental income or you've got the monthly income to come through to provide for the residency side of it as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a really easy, it's a really good option. There's also clients that have released finance from the houses in the UK, so kept the house in the UK, released finance from it to buy the properties in the UK. So if in Spain, so if they've released finance in Spain, that's a cash purchase. If they've released finance in the UK, sorry, that's a cash purchase in Spain, which goes towards the golden visa requirements. Sorry, and you did say the next part of that question. Sorry, Nigel.
No, I think you've answered it. Okay. So finally, the digital nomad visa, is that live yet, or what's the current position, and what are the outline rules?
Nearly there.
In true Spanish style, they announce something, tell you it's all there, and then the processes behind aren't actually open yet. So the digital, I'll let Emma explain this, because she's been doing some intense investigative work into digital nomad.
The digital nomad visa they released on the 23rd of December. Okay. And as Joe says, what they've not done is set up the platforms yet for us to be able to output the applications in. They're going to be looking at digital nomad visas. You're working remotely, you're a freelancer, or you work for a multinational company that permit that you work from Spain remotely, and that you've been doing so for at least the last 3 months. And it's important that that you have been working remotely for the last 3 months and can prove it. Okay.
They will check.
They're also going to want to make sure that you are qualified to work in that field. So they're going to want to see that you've got a degree in that field, or that you've got work experience in that field.
Hence
okay. Hence the 3 months looking into it. They're going to want to see that you've got funds to support yourself, or that your salary that you're taking is going to be enough to support yourselves and your family members if you're coming over with your family members. Okay. What they are doing is some interesting tax breaks, though, which is what we've been looking at for the last couple of weeks. But initially it's going to be, if we apply from Spain, which is going to be fantastic, you're going to have that visa for 3 years. Yeah. Once it's renewed, it's for 2 years, and then you get your permanent residency in Spain. But for those first 5 years, there's a great tax advantage for you. And they're going to be doing a flat fee of 24% taxes. So there's some interesting things coming up. We're actually looking at the tax side of it as we speak. But what we're waiting for at the moment is the platforms to be in place for us to put applications in.
We've got an application list as long as our arms, people waiting to go in and do it. But we actually can't put the applications in yet because we've not switched it on. So yeah, that's going to be the next delay.
Okay, there's one question here. How long do you have to live in Spain a year on a digital nomad?
No, what it is if you're working remotely for a multinational company and your contract's for a year, they'll give you a visa for your year. But if you want to live in Spain and your contract's indefinite and you say, hey, I want to be the 3 years to begin with, they will do it for the 3 years. Okay, so the first instance is you can have up to 3 years, and then you can renew it for a further 2. And on that renewal, on the second renewal, you can then have permanent residency in Spain.
But do you have to have a certain amount of time in Spain in order to keep that visa alive?
183 days. It's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. Well, I think there were obviously a lot of questions there on the visa side, which is obviously one of the more complex areas. Let's move on now to healthcare. So, can people, retiring to Spain, access the Spanish healthcare, or do they need to get private insurance? So, could you perhaps explain, how that works here?
So when you're retiring to Spain, and this is also applicable to spouse of a retiree, okay? So if you're younger than retirement age in the UK, but your partner or your husband or wife is a pensioner, then you will have rights to the pension and the healthcare in Spain as well. What you need to do, obviously, as if you're using us to go through the residency, we'll be making sure you get all this in place, but you need to speak to the Overseas Department of Work and Pensions in the UK, and they will issue you with the S1 form. The S1 form is a certificate that's issued from all member state countries to say that you are entitled to full, all-encompassing healthcare, free at the point of entry from your home country. It also, because of the convenio, because of the agreements between Spain and the UK, means that that S1 form guarantees the Spanish government that any healthcare you receive in Spain will be paid for by the British government. So it's imperative that you get that. You must have that certificate when we're putting the application in for the visa, and that will mean that you do not have to have your private health insurance. If you don't qualify for state healthcare in the UK, then you will have to have private healthcare. And private healthcare, like I mentioned earlier, must be 100% coverage with no exclusions, no co-payments, no excesses. It must have the certificate that states all of that.
Okay, we've got a question here. Can you get an S1 before your retirement age if you've retired before the answer is it's based on the retirement age. And also, I applied for one myself. I got it just before I left Spain, and it can take time. So do apply as early as you can.
The overall experience we have is that the S1 form does actually arrive relatively quickly. They're very, very helpful, but in Nigel's case, there are some times when it has taken a bit longer. So be prepared. But yes, you can apply for the S1. Is it 2 months?
2 months.
Yeah, it's about 2 months before your birthday that you become a pensioner. So depending on your age, I think at the moment is it 65 in the UK. 67 now, is it? They're talking 68 this morning on the radio, so I'm getting all confused where you're up to over there.
I think it depends on when. It was 66. I think it's going towards 67.
Right, yeah.
It's
So
somewhere in that area.
whichever your qualifying birthday is to access health pension, then up to I think it's 2 months or maybe even 90 days. We can double check that. You can actually put the application in for the S1 form. And you just, as Nigel said earlier, quite correct, rather than doing it online and through the forms, phone them. When you phone them, you get much better service. As soon as you can get through to them, that is, but you do get better service. They'll ask you a few questions. You just say to them, I will be retiring on that date and I am going to be moving to Spain. I need to have the S1 form to take with me, and they will get that sent out to you.
Yeah. Okay, we've had by retirement age, do you mean state pension age? The answer is yes, that is the key date. Your state pension age is the key point. So you can apply 2 months in advance, but it'll take effect from your state.
Yeah, it takes effect from the date of your birthday. Yeah.
Okay, so don't move before then. Okay, so that's I think all the questions. Yeah, that's all the questions at the moment. So are the rules for healthcare the same for all parts of Spain? Is one of the questions we had.
Yeah, healthcare in Spain is a national service. So therefore, yes, the qualifying rules are for the entire country. One of the things, once you've moved over to Spain, if you don't have state healthcare, and you have had to take private healthcare, then once you have completed your first year of residency, and this is a full year of residency, so we can't make the application prior to the first year, but once you've had a full year of residency, we can then apply for you to go on the state healthcare, and you pay a fee to be part of the state healthcare, which sometimes can work out cheaper than private healthcare, especially if you've got pre-existing conditions. That's called a convenio especial, so a special covenant. And again, if you need more information on that, we can talk to you about that.
Okay. One other thing is the EHIC and the GHIC, and one of the things to bear in mind is those are basically a form that enables you to get healthcare abroad, but in Europe. But it's also it's not dependent upon the age, but it is available to people who are traveling to Spain. It is not available if you're resident in Spain. If you have an EHIC, it's valid until it ceases to be in date, but you can then apply for a GHIC, I believe. Is that correct?
Right. It's now a global health insurance card as opposed to the European.
So it's just a new thing that Brexit, they negotiated that arrangement. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you're in Spain, resident in Spain, you can then get an EHIC, which will give you treatment in other parts of the EU.
Exactly.
When you're on holiday.
Yeah. The only thing I would say about the GHIC, is it is imperative that you understand that this does not replace health insurance. You still need to have holiday insurance, travel insurance, whatever. It is in addition to. So yeah, we've seen many people come unstuck with GHICs and EHICs in the past, thinking that they've got all-encompassing treatment. It will offer you treatment in emergency cases. So it's an emergency health treatment card, but it doesn't give you prolonged prescriptions or anything like that. Absolutely not. And in a lot of cases with the GHIC card, they will ask you to pay up front, and then you claim that back from the government when you get back. So that it depends on the individual institution that you walk into or get wheeled into, depending on what's happened.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on for them. Driving, which is another question. One is about bringing a car over, the other about driving license, and then the way the insurance works. So obviously there's been a lot of toing and froing on the driving license in Spain. There's been negotiations going on for months. Could you explain the current rules? If somebody's coming over now, what happens in terms of getting a Spanish driving license?
Okay, so when you become a resident of Spain now, you have 6 months to exchange your license. At the moment, the agreement is there, but we're waiting for everybody to sign it. What does that mean? At the moment, legally, you'd be looking at taking the test, okay, which is a theory and a practical test. However, once that agreement's in place, you'll be able to do the medical test, which is hands-eye coordination, and then you'll be able to swap it from your UK driving license to a Spanish issued driving license. The EU regulations have always stated that your driving license has to be issued from your country of residency. So when you get your non-lucrative visa, for example, now, you'll be getting residency, and within those 6 months, you'd be looking at either taking the test or exchanging your license if that agreement's in place.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, I mean, let's just tell our normal fun thing about driving in Spain, which is it's a very safe place to drive. It's great fun and so on, and perfectly okay. The one thing that everybody will tell you is be careful on roundabouts. Roundabouts in Spain, for some reason, Spaniards are taught, it's not them driving badly, it's the way they're taught to do it, is that they go round on the outside lane of the roundabout and they carry on until they come to their exit. So if you're going round and straight on, you will find somebody coming round on the outside, even you're going on the inside lane, and they will just carry on round. So that can often lead to problems, because Brits are used to doing it one way and Spaniards a different way. So always beware on roundabouts.
Yeah. It's the biggest cause of accidents for expats in this area.
I'm giggling
100%.
because I learned how to go. I learned driving in Spain, and I was taught to go around the outside of the roundabout.
Yeah.
So I am one of those people that go round the outside of the roundabout.
I am now because it's safer. I realised that one very quickly, but they do put infographics and informativos all over social media, etc., to tell people about these rules around roundabouts. Because in Spain, you're supposed to drive in one lane, and that continuation of that lane round the roundabout is the outside lane. So you are just in the outside lane, which is the main lane for driving. The inside lane is the lane for overtaking. So you don't overtake and you don't exit from an overtaking lane into off the roundabout. You have to be in the outside lane to exit. And if you're caught, you will be fined, and you get about 7 points or 6 points on your license. So beware.
Yeah, I would say on the motorway equivalents, Spaniards tend to be much better at sort of moving into the middle lane if you're trying to overtake them and so on. Although when you're on the outside, they can be very aggressive if you haven't moved out of the way.
Well, again, this is if you're doing your test over here, you are taught that the outside lane is for overtaking. And you are also taught in your lessons over here to flash people, to let people know that you are coming up behind them, and it's their responsibility to move in. So if you do see people flashing you on the motorway, they're not being aggressive. They're actually doing what they're taught to do in their lessons. And they also teach you to drive on the motorway as part of their lessons here, which is not in the UK.
I'm sure they are taught to flash their lights, but I'm sure they're not taught to come 6 inches from your bumper. But I mean, that rule of the outside lane is always there. And I think somebody said to me that what you do is, it's like going to the toilet, go in, do your business and get back out again, quickly as possible.
That's about right. Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, forgive me for that. The next thing is bringing a car. Now, many people want to bring their car across. It's, sometimes almost a member of the family. Practicalities of taking a car across is that you have to bear in mind the other side of the road. Whenever you go through a toll booth, whenever you're going into a car park, if you don't have a passenger, you have to get out the car, go around and do it. So those things mean that it's generally much more sensible to sell the car and get one here. But for those people who do have their love child, the sort of Ferrari or whatever it may be, could you explain what's involved in bringing a car now that we're no longer a member of the EU?
Yeah, cars have to go through an import now because it's non-EU. So when you have to declare that it's part of your assets and bring it over
within
30 days of getting your residency. Is going to be very, very close here in Spain, okay, of bringing your car over, declaring it as part of your assets and start doing the process for registration of that vehicle. It's 30 days. Otherwise, they're going to start wanting that import duty from you. And that's 33% of the car's value in Spain. Now, secondhand cars in Spain hold their value
much higher than the UK,
much higher. So you really have to think about whether that car is part of the family or not.
It's always the men.
Yeah,
and I hate to do divisions between male and female, but it is always the men that want to bring the car. And
because the mileage or because they've looked after it. When I normally then invariably work out the 33% for them, normally then they will live it back in the UK.
One of the things to bear in mind, though, there are different rules and regulations for classic cars and things like that. So again, what we need in order to give an accurate quote on the importation cost on a vehicle is the V5. We need to have the V5, then we can run it through the system and tell you exactly, as near as how much they would want an import costs, and then there's many other fees on top as well. So it can be a very costly experience and not always worth it. Again, sofa shopping, car shopping, so much better.
Okay, thanks. Just one last thing on cars, car insurance. Rates are reasonable and so on, but one of the big differences here is it's the car rather than the driver that is insured, and therefore you you can, anybody else who, provided they are over a certain age and have a valid driving license and so on, can drive your car on your insurance. They don't have to have their own insurance.
Yeah, it's a much, for me, I think it's a much better system. Here, the vehicle is insured. So as long as the vehicle's insured, any driver is insured to drive it as long as they're over 25 years of age. If they're under 25, just give them a call and add them onto the policy for the dates that they're going to be driving it. It's not expensive to do. But yeah, you don't even need written permission for somebody else to drive your car. It's just verbal permission. So if they get pulled over, the Polythea are going to have a look on who's the registered owner of that vehicle. They will then get in contact with you to say, such and such is driving this car. Do they have permission? Yes, they do, you say, and then it's fine. So it's very civilized.
Right. Okay. Banking. How easy is it to open a bank account in Spain? And can you open one before you get here?
Yes, you can. It's very easy these days. Over the last 12 to 18 months, they've had a big surge on online banks. Even within the major players over here. So you've got 4 or 5 major banks, the BBVA, Santander, La Caixa, Sabadell, etc. And all of those historically never had decent online bank options, and now they all do. You can open those from your front rooms in your home countries and get that set up. What I would say with all banks in Spain is there are many, many fees. The banking is not free in Spain by any stretch of the imagination. Typically, you're looking at paying around 15 to 20 euros a quarter to have a card. And maybe the same again for actually maintenance of that account. And then if you have money that you transfer into that account that comes from a non-EU account, so with that from outside of Europe, then my bank, for example, charges me 18 euros for every time somebody pays me from the UK or from the States. So I've stopped accepting those payments because it's extortionate. These days, there are other online banks such as Revolut or Wise or something like that. I have a Revolut account and I do all of my, pretty much all of my business transactions through that because I can receive money in from various different entities and different denominations. So it's much easier and much, much cheaper. There is an EU ruling that if you want to set up a direct debit for your home, etc., then the bank or the company can't refuse to have that EU direct debit from a lot of them will say it has to be a Spanish bank that it comes from. That's actually incorrect. And you can challenge the bank of that as long as it comes from an EU account, then it can be a direct debit set anywhere within the Eurozone. But that's still an uphill battle that a lot of people are fighting. So let the lawyers deal with that probably until that comes in and it's set in stone. So it's worthwhile having a Spanish bank account at the moment for things like your council tax and all that. However, over the next, I would say 18 to 24 months, you'll find that that's going to be, even that, you're not going to have to need it because you could have one of these online banks, which are much more user-friendly.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on to the internet. I guess, many people need it for, business reasons, if they're working, but also, a lot of private use, the big gamers in the adult community or whatever. But how good is the internet generally, and how universal is it, if like?
So across the whole of the costas now and the cities within Spain, there is what's this called? Fibre. There's fibre across the whole area, even in the mountains that run throughout Spain, and even in the valleys. There is fibre connections, or there is internet. Satellite. That's the what I meant. Sorry, satellite internet. So the satellite internet is run by various different companies, but we also have the Elon Musk one, the Starlink, which covers the whole of Spain. Now, there's not one nook or cranny that escapes Starlink. We have many of our customers and friends and family actually that live so only 10, 15 minutes away from where I'm sat right now, but we're in a very hilly area. And previously they always had major problems with the internet. It was all satellite internet. They've all connected to Starlink and have zero problems at all from that. So slightly more expensive. It's about 100 euros a month to have it, but for that stable connection and to be able to talk to your family in whichever of your home countries doing what we're doing now, or to work, it's a cost that's well worth investing in.
Yeah. Okay. And getting to see Coronation Street and EastEnders on BBC and to watch Sky and so on. How easy is that? Certainly when I arrived 3.5 years ago, I foolishly put a dish up at great expense and so on, and these days that's not necessary. Would you?
It's funny, there used to be a standing joke along the Costas that you could always tell where the Brits lived because they always had a big white dish outside the house for the internet, for the television, sorry. So yeah, you always knew a Brit house, but these days it's not. All the dishes are coming down. Everybody's watching their TV through the fibre connections. So society's changing. It's now Netflix and Prime Video, etc. So smart TVs, you can actually install those straight onto your smart TVs. You can get a box which will change what's called the IP, or give you a VPN, which is a virtual private network, and that will scramble the IP that comes into your property and makes the internet think that it's in the UK or in the US or wherever, so that you can download the apps pertinent to your country. So for the UK, for example, BBC iPlayer, ITVX, Channel 4OD, they can go straight on the TV, or indeed onto a Fire Stick or something like that. On top of that, there's many companies over here, and I'm sure there are in the UK as well. We call them dodgy boxes. So they are the boxes that have got all of the TV, Sky Sports, Netflix US, wherever, all onto the one box, and you just plug that in, pay about €100 a year, and you've got everything on there. I personally don't like them because I don't like scrolling down thousands and thousands of channels, and they never have a good square thing I can just look at, but it's horses for courses, whatever floats your boat.
Yes, indeed. We did have the IFI TV, as my wife refers to it, IPTV, and it does work, and it gets you access. And for somebody like me who likes rugby, it means I can get BT Sports and so on. Often when it's not being shown somewhere, you can get South African channels playing the game that you're not there. And if you've got Norwegian, Swedish, Dutch, every possible country, it's all there. And it's very low cost, as you say. I guess that's everything we have at the moment. I think we've asked all the questions, so we'll call it a day at that point. Just to finish off, thank you everybody for listening or for joining us. What we are, as I've said before, we're look to help you with your move. So if you have any questions, then please, just send us an email at expats@expatnetwork.com. If you want to get in touch with Joanne, just drop me a line, or you can get her at Joanne@aldertons.es. Is that correct?
Yeah. Hello at whatever you want, but yeah, aldertons.es, and there's a chat box there. You can send an email through to us as well. But yeah, happy to help. And if anyone's got any individual questions about the visas, then feel free to contact us, and myself or Emma will have a Zoom call with you privately.
Yeah. Okay. Many thanks, Joanne, Emma,
no problem.
and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you ever so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.